In the year 2000 California case of Chavers versus Owens, Illinois, Incorporated, in which a retired Navy seaman received $4.6 million in damages, it's worth noting that the jury also found the defendant, a manufacturer of asbestos products, not only guilty of negligence, but of fraud as well. Based on the evidence, the jury concluded that Owens, Illinois, had been involved in a conspiracy with other asbestos manufacturers to conceal facts regarding the danger of this material and had willfully misrepresented the true nature of the hazards the products pose to unsuspecting workers. The jury also determined that Owens, Illinois, had committed malice and oppression in its conduct. In a more recent case, a Los Angeles court awarded $10 million to an 82-year-old man who had contracted mesothelioma as a result of asbestos exposure resulting from his work as a machinist during the 1940s. In addition, the jury found that the defendant corporation was guilty of malice, fraud, and oppression. There is little doubt any longer that the corporations who placed profits above the health and well-being of people are guilty of criminal acts. Any human defendant found guilty of such conspiracy and fraud would serve a long prison term. The unfortunate fact is that while corporations claim human rights under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, they are apparently exempt from human responsibility and accountability. Therefore, when a corporation willfully and purposely injures someone, the victim's only recourse is litigation. The two court cases outlined earlier are examples of mesothelioma litigation, court actions in which the victim seeks compensation for his or her expenses, loss of income, and pain and suffering. In addition, juries often add punitive damages. These are payments above and beyond the victim's award for economic and non-economic losses designed to punish corporate malfeasance. In essence, such damages are intended to send a message to the corporate world that such malice, fraud, and oppression on its part will not be tolerated in human society. A short history of mesothelioma litigation. Texas lawyer Ward Stevenson was the first to litigate an asbestos product lawsuit. This action, filed in December of 1966 in Beaumont, Texas, named the plaintiff as Claude Tomplate, a former asbestos worker from Lake Charles, Louisiana. There were 11 named defendants, which included Johns Manville and Owens Corning, among others. Tomplate had been diagnosed with what his doctor called pulmonary dust disease, which had all the symptoms of asbestosis. The complaint's allegations stated that the defendants had either known or had an obligation to be aware of health hazards of asbestos. Their liability was based on a failure to warn Tomplate of these hazards. Today, failure to warn is a primary element in asbestos lawsuits. Of the 11 defendants, 5 were ultimately dropped from the suit. The jury found in favor of a 6th defendant. The other 5 defendants, however, agreed to an out-of-court settlement. In Stevenson's opinion, this indicated that the asbestos industry had legal vulnerability. In October of 1969, a second suit was filed against many of the same defendants by one of Tomplate's fellow workers, Clarence Borrell, who was suffering from advanced mesothelioma at the time. He died 8 months later, shortly after giving his deposition. 4 of the defendants, including Owens Corning, settled with Borrell's estate before the trial began in September of 1970. During that trial, the accident prevention manager for Johns Manville, whose wife ironically would later die of malignant mesothelioma, testified that he had never heard of asbestos toxicity prior to 1964, when Dr. Erling Selikoff presented a paper on the subject to the New York Academy of Sciences. Therefore, the corporation could not be held liable for injuries related to asbestos exposure occurring prior to that time. The cover-up exposed. Although the jury found in favor of the plaintiff in Borrell versus Fiberboard Paper Products Corporation, that particular defense, claiming ignorance prior to 1964, was quite successful against the failure to warn argument over the next few years. Then, in the spring of 1977, New Jersey lawyer Carl Ashe made a discovery that would reveal corporate conspiracy and malfeasance beyond any doubt. While representing 4 employees of Asbestos Manhattan against their former employer, Ash found a passage in the company's annual report suggesting that 40 years earlier, the company had commissioned a prominent insurance company to survey its factories and make recommendations on employee health and injury hazards. Ash had the court issue a subpoena to the company's CEO, who was the son of the company's founder, Sumner Simpson. William Simpson acknowledged that his company had commissioned a laboratory to study the harmful effects of asbestos. The findings of his study, along with correspondence with the head of Johns Manville regarding the subject, were discovered in an office closet where they had been stored since the late 1940s. These documents came to be known as the Sumner-Simpson Papers. They clearly show that the asbestos industry had deliberately conspired to suppress and, in many cases, falsify information related to the dangers of asbestos. The result was an explosion of mesothelioma litigation that continues to the present day. The current state of mesothelioma litigation. Until the 1980s, most people who served in the 3 branches of the U.S. government came from the legal profession, the military, or had background in statecraft. Today, an appalling number of congressional seats, as well as the offices of the executive branch, are held by former corporate CEOs, board members, and other business people. The result is that over the past quarter century, the government that is supposed to be representing the people now primarily represent big money corporate interests. Even 2 recent appointees to the Supreme Court, one of which spent his early years in business law, have shown a strong bias in favor of corporations over the rights of people in recent court decisions. This does not bode well for the future of mesothelioma litigation. Over the past several years, there have been numerous legislative attacks on the rights of people to sue large corporations. Pennsylvania Republican Senator Arlen Specter's FAIR Act, which would have ended the right of asbestos victims to sue, failed to pass in the year 2006. Additionally, mesothelioma has a solid 30-year body of case law and precedent from which plaintiffs' attorneys have been able to draw on in order to successfully argue their clients' cases. While no attorney can guarantee you a multi-million-dollar settlement, you should know that history and the evidence are on your side. Do your due diligence. Choose a lawyer who has knowledge and experience in mesothelioma litigation, and make sure you have a strong case with credible evidence, and you will receive justice. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by Asbestos.net, a leading resource on all aspects of asbestos and mesothelioma. Our priority is to inform victims about the devastating effects of asbestos exposure, mesothelioma, asbestos cancer, asbestosis, and other asbestos-related diseases, and to advise them with a wealth of information. Individuals whose lives have been touched by mesothelioma have numerous questions and concerns. Their caregivers and family members also need accurate, reliable information. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or asbestos cancer and need more information, we invite you to visit and explore the thousands of pages of oncologist-reviewed material on Asbestos.net, to call our convenient toll-free number shown below and speak with a mesothelioma specialist, or to use the simple contact form found at Asbestos.net to request a free copy of our informative books, custom inserts, and DVD. Asbestos.net. Information and help for patients and families.
Sokak ortasında gasp dehşeti bu kadar da olmaz dedirtti. Beşiktaş'ta hemşire olduğu öğrenilen genç bir kadın işe giderken gaspçı dehşeti yaşadı. Görüntülerde yolda yürüyen kadının arkasından sessizce gelen bir kişi aniden kadının üzerine atlıyor ve ardından da genç kadını sürükleyerek yere yatırıyor. Zanlı daha sonra yerdeki kadının yüzü ve karnına peş peşe yumruk atıyor, ardından da kadının saçlarından tutarak kafasını yere vurmaya başlıyor. Çaresizce çırpınan kadınsa çantasını bırakmıyor. Bunun üzerine telaşa kapılan saldırgan kadının elindeki telefonu alıp hızla olay yerinden kaçıyor. Polis saldırganı Ümraniye'de düzenlediği bir operasyonda yakaladı. Zanlı tutuklanarak cezaevine gönderildi.